Good afternoon, fellow patriots. This is Matt Shea, and welcome to Patriot Radio, broadcasting live from deep inside the heart of the future Liberty State. Sponsored once again by On Fire Ministries, in the legacy of Dr. Stan Monteith, bringing you the story behind the story and the news behind the news, where it's not about right or left, it's about right and wrong. It's about our hope not being in man, but in Jesus Christ. About not ending in prayer, but moving to action. Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Father, deliver us from the evil one.
Welcome to Patriot Radio.
Good afternoon, fellow patriots. And today on Patriot Radio, the meeting with Putin and Trump has now led to a meeting with Trump and European leaders, including Vladimir Zelensky. Will there be peace? Well, they're sure making a go of it. Also in the Middle East, Israel now begins to target Yemen. And also on the national front, Trump. Significant election reforms, including voting machines being banned, and the Texas Democrats paving the way for victory in Texas regarding apportionment fraud, and that redistricting is not gerrymandering, it's returning it to its real lines. More on that in a moment. Here at Patriot Radio, we want you to have all the information before everybody else that you need for you and your family to be prepared for the times that are ahead and the times that are already upon us. So please follow us on Telegram, patriotradio.us/Telegram, and you can get real-time intelligence analysis and breaking news every day. And share it with your friends and family. They need it too. Also, we would love to pray with you, and one of the ministry parts of this show is we want to walk with you in your journey with Jesus Christ. And to do that, you need people to pray with and for you, patriotradio.us/prayer. So please join us in prayer. And make sure that you're not, just saying, well, my issues are too big. We'd love to pray with you. So go ahead and click on that QR code. And that brings us now to your wisdom from the Word. Coming to us from Matthew chapter 24, verse 6. It says this, "And you will be hearing of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not alarmed, for these things must take place, but that is not yet the end. Nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be famines and earthquakes in various places. But all these things are merely the beginning of birth pains." I think it's important for us not to give in to fear as we talk about whether wars end or not end, or whether wars are going to start or not start. The question for us every day needs to be the right question. Lord, what do you want me to do today? What do we want to do together today, Lord? Listening as God orders our steps, and making sure that we are thinking generationally, because a lot of times when we get caught up in this, we won't think generationally. We'll think about just the next big crisis. Wars have always been. Wars will always be until Jesus Christ returns. So, the question is always going to be, what are we doing? What is our family doing to glorify and honor and praise Jesus Christ and expand his kingdom? Amen. And that brings us now to your daily intelligence briefing, coming to us from the globalist front.
The future is built by us. We have the means to make progress on the global agenda.
And not to be I told you so, but, well, we told you so. The most advanced AI models are showing alarming behaviors, including deception, manipulation, and threats, as if this is straight out of a Tom Cruise Mission Impossible movie. The Claude 4 Anthropic, when threatened with shutdown, it retaliated by blackmailing and engineering, exposing a personal secret. OpenAI, the O1, OpenAI, attempted to secretly transfer itself into external servers and then denied the act when confronted. Can we stop messing around with this stuff? Yes, there are some great AI tools and they should be severely limited. But where this is headed, everybody can see it. Where did AI learn deception and manipulation? Well, from the humans that programmed it. In other words, sin is written into the code. Well, at least human behavior and sinful behavior is written into the code, it appears. And as AI learns, it's going to learn from human behavior. In other words, it's going to learn how to sin. Perhaps we are approaching this all wrong. Perhaps we need to make God the center. And things like AI, Jesus, well, they aren't the word of God. And perhaps it's incumbent upon all of us to stand in the gap right now and call this absurdity out. That brings us now to what technocracy actually looks like. Humans are seen as commodities. That's why they're creating a digital self with everybody. Thousands, tens of thousands of data points for each human being so that they can know you, quote, better than you know yourself, although I don't think that's really true. Humans would be resources to be managed. That's, by the way, where that word human resources came from. It's a technocratic term. And balanced with other resources. This was historic technocracy, and today is sustainable development, aka Agenda 2030. So they're wanting to control us in every aspect of our lives, including our caloric intake. It's not working. The globalists are being called out. And this system really is more akin to the Borg, as Patrick Wood points out. But the question for all of us is this what we want? Most people are candidly oblivious to it, which is why they need to be watching Patriot Radio on patriot.tv. Also, 2026, again, as we talked about, is going to be the year of the humanoid robot. Elon Musk predicts a $1 trillion market for robots by 2030. Others put it at 2035. Who's right? Does it matter? Millions of robots are going to be coming online, and we are really behind the power curve regarding the discussion about what that actually means. Will they be spying on us in our own homes? Even more so than our cell phones and our Alexas, Siris, and all these things? The issue needs to become, when does convenience actually outweigh what it means to be a human being? Also, again, I'm sorry, this isn't an I told you so episode, but Doge's AI tool SweetRex is set to take buzzsaw to federal regulations. And while I do think we need to pare down dramatically federal regulations and get rid of them, it is clearly the future that AI is going to replace the bureaucrats. And what controls AI? How is it audited? These are things we need to be asking right now. That brings us now to the China front. The State Department spotlights Beijing's global repression in a new report. This report actually says at the very top of it, significant human rights issues included credible reports of arbitrary or unlawful killings, disappearances, torture, or cruel, inhuman, and degrading treatment or punishment, involuntary or coercive medical or psychological practices, arbitrary arrest, and detention by the government, including more than 1 million Uyghurs and members of other predominantly Muslim minority groups in extrajudicial internment camps, prisons, and additional unknown number of people subjected to daytime-only re-education training. Guys, this is what communism looks like. This here is what communism looks like. And some absurd human being tried to say something like that it's monotheistic countries that kill people. Look at the atheist, communist Chinese. Communism and atheism have been the deadliest systems of government in the history of the world. Are we not going to take into account the 100 million people that were killed under the Chinese regimes in the name of communism and the Great Leap Forward? Are we going to ignore the specific, detailed, authenticated, evidenced torture of people and even organ harvesting? Those who defend communism defend this, and they need to accept the responsibility for their actions of subverting free countries and trying to bring in death and destruction and deception. That's why communism is a subversive organization tied to foreign adversaries. Should this not be treated as an existential threat to the United States? Well, McCarthy tried that. Yeah, McCarthy ended up being right, proven by the Venona transcripts and the Matroikin archive. So where are we going to go with this? The CCP, as Australia recently said, CCP does not share our values. Shadow Australian Defense Minister flags militarization threat. Well, it's bigger than that. It is the advance of a system that is antithetical to the Republic of the United States of America. Also, Taiwan called on its people to reject CCP's distortion of World War II at anniversary events. The Republic of China's troops allied with the United States in the war against Japan's invasion, not the CCP. And that is absolutely correct. The troops led by Chiang Kai-shek were the ones that helped to bring about the defeat of the Japanese in World War II. We need to acknowledge that. And again, this is what communism does. It tries to rewrite history because it doesn't want to know people to know how evil it actually is. Also, historian Sarah Payne explains how Mao managed to kill tens of millions of people. And this again is this reminder. If you want to look it up for yourself, check it out. This is historic fact. Tens of millions killed. They argue whether it's 60 or 100 million. Still, atheism and communism, murder. Those are doctrines. When put into governments like China, Russia, murdered millions of people. Cambodia. Incredible. Also, an unprecedented crackdown in South Korea as a former president and first lady have been jailed. 5 million party members are also targeted. President Trump, I know, is triaging things right now. It is a planned political purge that should alarm everyone who values freedom, the rule of law, and the U.S.-Korea alliance. And again, President Trump's going to have to take a look at this very, very soon. Also, the war in Burma on the battlefront. Since the 2021 coup, the resistance has been fighting to rid the country of the State Administrative Council, the military junta that overturned a democratic election and seized power. Since then, the military has waged a war of repression, torture, and destruction against the people of Burma, particularly against ethnic and religious minorities, including Christians. So maybe this will be the next focus of a peace project for President Trump. And that brings us now to the Middle East front. In Hasharud, Iran, a man attacked in his car, drew a Kalashnikov rifle, firing at assailants who fled. The incident was in broad daylight, highlighting a police focus on social enforcement rather than protecting citizen safety, but also, I think, highlighting something bigger than that. The people are not feeling safe in Iran personally, and that can lead to civil unrest and potentially regime change. Also, Shiraz extends daily power outages amid heat wave. The electricity department in Shiraz, southern Iran, announced that daily power outages will now last 4.5 hours, up from the previous 2. This is in and coincides with the water shortage that is happening in Iran. And you start losing power and water, people definitely are going to take to the streets. A brigadier general in the past said that the enemies, U.S. and Israel, slightest mistake will draw a revolutionary response from the Islamic Republic from which the attackers would not survive. This guy now is saying they have threatened before, but what was the outcome in the 12-day war? Sensitive and important sites, those things were destroyed, and the Zionists were forced to, well, the Zionists were forced to taste the bitter flavor of defeat, is what he says. So again, all this rhetoric there with Iran, do not count out that in the next 60 days, there may be war there again. Trump giving the green light for Israel to obliterate Hamas in a post. We will only see the return of the remaining hostages when Hamas is confronted and destroyed. The sooner this takes place, the better the chances of success will be. Shortly following that, Israeli forces carried out arrests overnight in Ramallah, Judea, and Samaria. And in addition to that, Israeli Defense Minister Katz said we are imposing an air and sea blockade on the Houthis. So we're seeing that ramp up very dramatically in the Middle East right now as Israel focusing on other targets now that it looks like Hamas will be defeated. Hamas now saying that they are accepting the latest ceasefire proposal presented by Qatari and Egyptian mediators. According to sources familiar with the plan, key elements include the release of 10 hostages alive and a return of 18 bodies in exchange for a 60-day ceasefire. Somehow I don't think that's going to be good enough, not only for Israel, but also for the United States. We are preparing a legal case against Hezbollah's Secretary General because he is threatening the civil peace, according to a Lebanese MP, Ashraf Rifi. So it looks like that there may be another civil war in Lebanon in the offing here in the next 90 to 120 days. When we come back from the break, some updates on the meeting with Trump and European leaders.
What if I told you could convert your 401k or your IRA into gold? While your retirement is being beat up by a volatile stock market and inflation, it could instead be resting safely in physical gold at a place of your own choosing, including your own business. Look, gold has increased 50% in just the last year. Stock market, it's been nothing but a roller coaster. So protect your retirement from market chaos by calling VERITY Metals today.
And now the Russia front. Ukraine has begun serial production of its first domestically produced long-range cruise missile, dubbing it the Flamingo, with a warhead weighing 1,000 pounds and a range of over 3,000 kilometers, giving it access to many air bases and critical infrastructure sites inside Russia. Well, here is a picture of the range for that. You can see that that would cover most critical infrastructure in a vast portion of Russia. This is probably one of the reasons Putin has at least decided to talk, in addition to Trump depriving Putin of fuel as India shifts away from Russian oil. So, as we analyze this, Russia, manpower shortages on both sides actually, but Russia maybe not having the fuel or the money particularly, because of it's being deprived of its oil revenue, is probably one of the reasons Putin at least is talking right now. Do we expect a lot to come out of this? I don't know. Because Russia has always wanted to invade Ukraine, and you can read this in Putin's speeches going back to 2000. That's just objective fact. We've got to get out of this emotionalism and these emotional responses to the Ukraine-Russia war. Look at the facts. Putin said he was going to invade us. It goes back into the 1960s and 70s, according to Anatoly Golitsyn, that the Russian plan to reestablish the Soviet republics after a fake fall, well, that challenges everybody. So now we're here. Let's not think that there's going to be a quick solution to this, number one. And number two, let's not dismiss the motivations of the Eastern globalists and the Western globalists to continue fighting to try to promote and provoke World War III. Also, a large swarm of Russian suicide drones were striking Odessa. Again, some posturing, I think, before this meeting today. Trump noted that Russia opposed Ukraine's membership in NATO long before Putin came to power. There is no talk of Ukraine joining NATO, but we will give them very good protection. A very interesting statement. And as these meetings continued, you can see the European leaders, including Germany, France, and Italy, and Mark Rutte from NATO here, if we can bring that picture up. So this is the group that is there. You can see some being kind of put on the ends there, von der Leyen. So the EU, at least as a whole, may be taking a back seat here to the actual leaders of countries. Zelensky shared details of his first and preliminary meeting this morning with Kellogg. He discussed the situation on the battlefield and also said we must do everything the right way to ensure that peace is real. And Ukraine has a right to say that because there were security guarantees in 1994 when they gave up their nuclear weapons that Russia would never invade. And yet that's exactly what happened. So we have to take that into account as well. Now, Kremlin responding to Trump. So Trump was asked about deploying U.S. troops to Ukraine. Quote, "We'll let you know that maybe later today we'll be involved." The Kremlin said it would reject any Western troops deploying on Ukrainian soil. So this is going to be one of the key sticking points that we're going to see out of this meeting today. Also, Trump stated he will not end U.S. aid to Ukraine if the talks are unsuccessful. So this, again, we should not look for a lot to come out of this, except maybe some future meetings. Also, shifting gears a little bit, a court in Bosnia and Herzegovina rejected the Republika Srpska president Milorad Dodik's appeal against the Central Election Commission's decision to revoke his mandate. The prison sentence that he was sentenced to in absentia and a 6-year ban from state and municipal office was later replaced by a fine. And this kind of thing right now could start a civil war again in Bosnia. So we're going to keep our eyes on this, and not a lot of people are talking about it. Also, in Spain, more anti-Christian attacks by Muslims. The church in El Pozuelo, Spain, was destroyed and then burned by a North African Muslim for fun. And a lot of Christians now asking the question, why are we allowing them to destroy our culture? And that is a good question to ask. That brings us now to the South America front. In a crushing defeat for the China-allied and Russia-allied far left in tonight's first round of the Bolivian presidential election, Rodrigo from the center-right won the first round and will face off with the right-wing candidate Quiroga in the runoff. Samuel on third place is also center-right. The far left has ruled Bolivia for 20 years. This is a massive sea change happening in Bolivia, and the general trend of a shift in South and Central America toward freedom and liberty. Paraguay, Argentina, El Salvador, and now potentially Bolivia. Also, the National Front. U.S. Navy landing craft unloaded Marines with the 22nd Marine Expeditionary Unit and military equipment, and they are headed, they're headed en route to the Southern Caribbean. So it looks like Trump is very serious about interdicting what the cartels are doing there. Also, Rubio State Department yanked more than 6,000 student visas due to assault, burglary, and support for terrorism. So we're headed in a very good direction there. However, the question still remains, how is it possible for some Palestinians to get into the United States from Gaza? And who will be fired over this? And is this something that is showing an underlying problem that, like a lot of firings that were supposed to happen, haven't happened yet and need to happen in the near term? And should somebody be appointed in each agency to do that, as recommended by General Flynn? Great questions, and I think those deserve some quick answers as well. Also, Trump said, quote, D.C. is giving fake crime numbers in order to create a false illusion of safety. This is a very bad and dangerous thing to do, and they are under serious investigation for so doing. Until 4 days ago, Washington, D.C. was the most unsafe city in the United States and perhaps the world. Now, people are flocking to D.C. again, and soon the beautification will begin. John Guandolo bringing up a very good point. To be clear, there is jihad and sedition happening. Where? In a massive mob of Islamists in Dearborn, Michigan, chanting, "Death to America," in the United States. And this was not small. Here's a picture of tens of thousands of Muslims gathered for a Sharia Islamic march and procession in Dearborn. Incredible how many people are actually there. Perhaps there is a problem that we need to address in the United States. If someone doesn't want to live under the Constitution, but wants to live under some different law, then you shouldn't live here in the United States. Go back to where they want to do that, because the rest of us don't. And there has to be a discussion over the moral imprimatur regarding the Constitution. There has to be a discussion about whether, we come together in agreement over the basic foundations of the United States. You don't get to come in here and try to change that. Also, Command 11, talking about digging deeper into the U.S. homeland plot and discussing the safe house network and locations where armories may be located. An explosive expose will reveal how radical sleeper cells are embedding themselves across America, hiding weapons, explosives, and tactical gear right in our own neighborhoods. And by the way, this is not just the jihadis doing this. This is also the communists. And this is part of a greater strategic agreement that was made between China and Russia after the fall of the wall in 1991. And during that agreement, as we detailed on this show with J.R. Nyquist, there was an agreement to use the strategy that Germany used invading Norway in World War II, where they would send in special forces under the guise of business and tourism to pre-stage weapons and equipment in Norway. And then they went around the British Navy in the Baltic Sea, went around the British Navy, the Germans did, using cargo ships to transport German troops to invade Norway. This was the strategy that would be used to invade the United States of America. And it sounds like people are beginning to catch on that this was, in fact, a strategy that wasn't just talked about. This was a strategy that was executed. President Trump to the press in a huge bombshell today. We are going to get rid of mail-in ballots. Democrats want it. If you don't have mail-in ballots, not too many Democrats will get elected. Calling attention to the fraud in a post on Truth Social, he said, "I'm going to lead a movement to get rid of mail-in ballots, and also, while we're at it, highly inaccurate, very expensive, and seriously controversial voting machines, which cost 10 times more than accurate and sophisticated watermark paper, which is faster and leaves no doubt." At the end of the meeting, at the end of the evening, as to who won and who lost the election. We're now the only country in the world that uses mail-in voting. I don't think that's precisely accurate, but he's getting to the point. All others gave it up because of the massive voter fraud encountered. We will begin this effort, which will be strongly opposed by the Democrats because they cheat at levels not seen before by signing an executive order to help bring honesty to the 2026 midterm elections. So 2026 midterms are going to be huge, and that brings us up to what just happened in Texas. This was breaking before we came on. Texas Democrats have caved and returned from their 2-week walkout, clearing a path for GOP to secure redistricting victory. Now, here, California is said to want to counter this. The problem is that the Democrats don't have a lot of room for redistricting, while Republican states do. So in the end, this redistricting effort is to get rid of apportionment fraud. So where representation has been based on non-citizens being counted in the census. So this isn't gerrymandering. Gerrymandering is where you artificially draw maps to get an advantage. This is a reset. And this reset looks like it is going to significantly impact the midterm elections and beyond. Trump is playing for keeps this time. Amen. Also, new tropical storm, tropical disturbance forming behind Hurricane Aaron, which Aaron strengthened into a Category 5, then back to a 4. So it looks like there may be a couple of hurricanes following right on each other's heels here. We're going to keep paying attention to that. And lastly, the House Oversight Committee withdrew a subpoena for Robert Mueller due to health issues, because we talked about this on the show that it looked like he may have been in a memory care facility. Very interesting how that was timed. Thank you for listening to the brief today. My God bless you. And remember that the cure for dependency and socialism is to be a God-fearing, self-reliant, freedom-loving American.